Welcome to the Inside Integration Podcast. My name is Chris. I am joined, as always, by my partner, Jason.
What's up, everybody?
And today we're going to talk a little bit about we had a couple of events. One that these guys stood up a whole bunch of shows up in the Pacific Northwest. We had a tech summit. We've got all kinds of industry news and all kinds of good stuff that will hopefully stop you from driving off the road.
Yeah, there's no targeted. There's a targeted audience for this conversation, but there's no target in this conversation. I think it's really more about just catching up on what's going on, kind of kicking it around, what's been happening out there. Again, tons of news that we can certainly talk about, but all of those takes have already been sort of made. And I think it's fun to talk a little bit about what we've been going through and what we've been up to. I mean, I don't think I have seen more miles on my credit card or under the wheels of whatever said rental vehicle full of stuff in a considerable amount of time as I have here in the month of May into early June as we're headed as we record this. It's been crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and it's funny too because like when you look at the main calendar, right? Like it always seems to be there's a couple of things that stand out on the calendar, right? CEDIA is always that fixed week, right? So you don't really plan anything around there, and then you've got all your other stuff, right? You've got a ProSource summit, you've got an ATHA summit, you've got an HSA summit, you've got Infocom coming up, you've got a bunch of stuff. So we always end up, especially with like reps with like multiple lines, there's only so many slots that you can slot people into.
Right.
And that's sort of what's going on. Like at the end of the school year, sounds funny to say, but at the end of the school year is usually when all of that stuff gets slotted in, because if you don't slot it in then when everybody's kids get out of school, like people go on vacation. So now you're drawn from a smaller pool where, you know what? It's summer. I got to get this project done before the 4th of July or before Memorial Day or before Labor Day or whatever it is. And like, you don't really pull it in, but man, that calendar is just, it feels like it's more full every single year with just all kinds of stuff. Crazy.
The doldrums of summer. Yeah. It really starts in spring though, right? Like when I think back, I thought May was pretty crazy, but it really kind of goes all the way back to kind of March. You kind of come out of I was going to say the doldrums, but it's not the right word, but the kind of the lull, I guess, that you get through the beginning part of the new year. It's crappy weather up here, and a lot of part of the country, you got CES, there's a bunch of weird stuff, hangovers from the holidays.
Yep.
It really seems like it's, January, February are kind of sleepy, and then March, April really starts to set the fuse on fire for the fireworks that are going to be happening from the early part of May through September, November, right? Like, yep. I know there's an October in between there, but, you and I both know, and maybe many people listening to this, but nobody really wants to talk to us after November 15th. And we won't see you again until sometime in January. So enjoy that holiday.
That is like, it's funny because everybody kind of goes radio silent. Like, yeah, you're right around maybe a week or two before Thanksgiving. And then we don't hear from anybody until middle of January.
Yeah. Don't call me. I'm busy. There's holidays. It is weird. Like we just illustrated to begin with here. Like I thought about it now, like the fragments of the calendar that we have opportunity in terms of just like wide open things from the rep side of the world, and maybe even the sales cycle is kind of finite. That's pretty defined. You've got the preload in the fall for what's going to happen in the spring.
Yep.
And then you're executing through the summer months, and you've got a few national holidays in there, and some fireworks and some days that you can't wear white pants after, and then after that you're back into the fall and the leaves are on the ground, and it's crunch time before Turkey Day.
It's amazing. It's amazing how that happens. And again, it feels like it's faster every year, dude. It's just every year. And like, this kind of feels like a light year, right? Like we don't have any, there hasn't been, aside from, and I'm just kind of taking a 10,000 foot view here, but
sure.
Like, aside from like tariffs and that kind of, those sorts of things that are like, industry shaking news, like, there haven't been any like super blockbuster innovations, right? Like
bomb drops. Yeah. Like, was there anything at the tech summit that you saw that like jumped out at you as like, oh, hey, this is a new thing, or this is a signal of a trend or anything?
No, it felt like I mean I've been to the one in Irvine here, man. I think this is like my fifth or sixth year in a row since I've been out here. This one was,
Braggart.
yeah, shut up. This this one was definitely it was less busy than last year for sure. And again, I don't know attendance numbers or whatever else, but it was less busy for sure. Like there were definitely less people there. It was the way things were organized was, it was good. Like there were a couple good education sessions and that kind of thing. But there was a lot of little like bits and pieces and stuff, right? Like obviously you had your big guys, right? Like, Samsung had a corner. And,
I heard, I saw a picture of it. It looked,
yeah,
my days at the Tech Summit, there was none of that
no,
shenanigans going on. You had your little table and your little area and maybe a dark space, and that was it. You couldn't be crazy.
That was the idea, is that they took one of the dark spaces and they basically fitted it out with, because they don't really have any long throw projection, right? So they took a dark space, they put a short throw projector in there, they put a bunch of models, of TVs, and people were kind of rolling through it, and yeah, that is great.
It looked
like,
pretty bougie.
yeah,
I will say the
like,
picture I saw of it, I was like, that's nicely executed.
It was a good setup. It was well executed, and not just saying that because
yeah,
Samsung's our line and we know those guys, but
objectively, the picture looked nice.
Yeah, objectively, the picture looked nice, and the setup was good, and it was, but like that was an outlier, right? Like everywhere else, it was like you got your one table, you got your wares on the table and your board, and you're kind of, it's more of a networking experience, right? It's more of a have a conversation with somebody, reach over, pick up an example of what you're talking about, show them how this thing works. There wasn't really a ton of anything earth-shattering or groundbreaking or whatever. It was like, okay, it's we've got an amp, it's got a web interface, we've got here's our new TV lines so that you can take a look at it and see what it's all about. And then a couple of things I would probably say. What was really interesting to me was that there was, for the first time I've seen it at one of these shows, is there was somebody there from Marvin Doors and Windows, and they were a headline sponsor of this event. And there wasn't a ton that they were showing other than, here's these, you can get alarm contacts baked into your, baked into
window
your
frames.
Which is really smart, and it's something that that when I was an alarm guy, like drilling windowsills was like,
dude, terrifying.
Terrifying, right? Like I'm gonna screw this up. I'm gonna void this warranty. How am I gonna do this? And the client doesn't want the thing stuck on air, so you're stuck doing it. But I thought it was interesting that that's decidedly a non high tech line that's shown at this event. The other thing I saw that was pretty interesting was a company called Faraday, and you may have heard of them, you may not have. They're pretty low key, pretty under the radar. But what they make are specialized, and this is especially a concern in California, a couple other states. They make specialized motion sensors, right? So by code in California, you've got to have a motion sensor for auxiliary rooms, laundry rooms, closets, that kind of thing, so that it automatically turns your lights off. It's a an occupancy sensor, right? So it needs to, lights are only turned on when there's actually somebody in there, which energy savings wise, that makes perfect sense. However, the leading the leading lighting manufacturer, Lutron, their motion sensor, if you've ever seen it, is
big and gnarly.
It's the size of a hockey puck, and it's it's wireless, so and which works amazingly reliably because it's Lutron, right? Like that's their whole claim to fame. But these are small wired motion sensors. They blend in with the ceiling. They're like so unobtrusive. They have flush mounting methods, right? Like you could sheetrock and spackle right up to the edge of the thing, and it's just a little tiny circle that sticks out. So what usually happens in these projects that you do, especially in California, is the electrician comes out, wires a whole home, does all the stuff, puts all the motion sensors on the ceiling with like two-sided tape, so it'll look good. The thing passes inspection. It passes,
and then they rip them off.
Yeah, and then they take them down, and now there's no more motion sensing in that room. They change the programming back and whatever, and nobody is ever going to come back into a home to inspect it,
right? To
make sure that this is a thing.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more. Say no more.
Exactly. And the problem with that is, sure, okay, so aesthetically it makes perfect sense that you don't want this nasty thing hanging on your ceiling, even if it's in a utility room or a closet or a laundry room or whatever. But one of the great things, like, we're in the home automation business, right? So your home automation, you know, you remove those sensors, you're removing, like, you know, some eyes and ears of your system that you can use for other things, right? Like, I would want that kind of motion sensor. You know, maybe I don't want it to turn off while I'm standing in there after 5 minutes or whatever the law specifies or whatever. But, like, you know, if there's no motion in that room for like a day and that light is on, yeah, I definitely want that thing to turn off.
Right.
You know, or if my house is in vacation mode and, you know, something trips that motion sensor, either I know that my shelves collapsed or, you know, somebody's robbing my, you know, robbing my closet, or they're in my garage or whatever.
Taking all my Jordan cards, dude. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, they're taking my Pogs. Like, how, I don't want that.
My Ken Griffey Jr. rookie.
Yeah, dude. I mean, all my Star Wars figures.
Oh man, why are you talking about my office, bro?
If you don't have the Chewbacca bandolier that holds the figures in it from 1983, I don't even know if you're a real Star Wars fan.
You know, I have the Darth Vader head that you open up and all of the guys are inside.
I had one of those. Yeah, I think we all had that.
That's fine.
But the point is, you know, yeah, aesthetically great. You know, get it out of there, right? Like, you don't want that; it's nasty looking. But yeah, these guys, Faraday, came up with a solution. It's a wired. It's a wired motion sensor, so you can use it with an alarm system. You can use it with, you know, most, depending on what system you use, Vantage, Lutron, you know, you just have to run a contact closure down to whatever the closest keypad is. It's got an input for it, so you can use it in any project. And dude, these things are dope. Like, like, they are.
That's a cool innovation.
Yeah, they're so small. Like, I would almost, you know, especially one of the ways it ties into what we do is, you know, things like we're like, you know, full ham fisting the, you know, the linear lighting stuff. Right. And
sure,
a big use case for linear lighting is your stairs.
Or bathroom under counters,
or bathroom
and toe
under
kicks
counter, toe
in the middle
kick,
of the night. Yeah.
Yeah. Dust bunnies, that kind of thing. Like, yeah, how awesome would it be is, you know, when you approach the threshold of your stairs, that these things, you know, glow up. And then, you know, 5 minutes later, when there's no motion, they glow back down because nobody's looking at them.
Right.
You know, like, those are things in this industry that, you know, that's what puts the custom into custom integration and home automation and everything else.
Puts the cuss into custom.
Exactly. It puts the cuss into custom because your programmer is going to spend 2 weeks trying to figure out how to, you know, set a repeat command.
I'll write that down. That's the name of this show. Put the cuss into custom.
There you go. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. And I know it sounds dumb, me talking about a motion sensor in, you know,
right. Well, yeah,
there, but
the context of all of the sexy things, right? But it's those kind of innovations that
TVs, amps, speakers, lighting fixtures, like, yeah, it was all pretty good across the board. That was an innovation that I saw. That was something that looked really cool to me. You know, some of that stuff, some of the automated proposal software, like Portal had a booth there, and I thought that was
X10 or X10. I don't know if that's one that you've heard of. That is an AI thing where it's doing plans and it's doing load calculations and it's doing all of those kind of things. I mean, you know, not to make every episode about AI, but those are the kinds of tools that really are going to change the game for everybody. So yeah, making sure you've got your head wrapped around what that can actually do for you is really critical, I think.
Yeah, I think
today, but also next week, or, you know, let's ask Anthony Chang about, you know, what he thinks about it, because from what I know, he's telling me AI is the thing that's happening. I don't know.
I believe that. I think it's something that would finally hit critical mass. Like, we need a manufacturer to do it, and I wouldn't be surprised. And again, I don't know anything. I'm not an insider or anything. I would have to say that within the next year, you know, maybe CEDIA time frame, I don't know, but I'll bet you one of the major control systems has that on their banner, that, you know, we've got AI features, right? And then you can do certain things like expose sensors to an AI engine that'll, you know, maybe run some scenes based on what it thinks or something like that. You know, it'll be like the first couple steps, but I think it's coming.
Like a really conditional, like active conditional kind of logic, as opposed to something that's fuzzy where it's actually going, okay, based on this set of parameters. I think Josh can probably do kind of some of those things, not to call anybody. I mean,
Sure.
there is a company that has AI in their name out
Right.
there, but and they're probably yelling at this podcast if they ever heard it, or some
No, these
AI
guys are
bot is
idiots. Yeah, we
scraping the
are.
internet
We
because
sure
we said
are.
Josh AI too many times in a brief stint. But
We're just we're just juicing the SEO. That's what we do.
they can't be the only thing, right? Like
No.
with the big players out there. I mean, shit, with Samsung and smart things. I mean, every Samsung TV above Q7 is a smart thing hubs or smart things hub, right? So
Yep.
there you actively have purchased the center mass of what could be, basically spun up into some kind of automation system between Wiz or
Yep.
some of the other things that are out there. So
It's true. I mean, I bought a refrigerator this week
you
because
sucker.
my terrible my fridge that we've had to have service on.
Not a hot rod. It's not a cool bike.
Nope.
It's not even a new camera.
This
It's
is
a
when you're-
fridge for milk.
When you're 45, married with 2 kids, living in suburbia, it's a fridge. That's what you get excited for. That's what you got out of bed for. But no, we went and looked, and there were a ton of models. A lot of them with screens. What was great about the appliance shopping experience is that I was able to park my 9-year-old and my 5-year-old in front of
A fridge.
in front of a fridge with a screen on it and say, mess with this, mom and dad are going to go look at fridges over here. And that's exactly what they did. They were drawing pictures on there. Somehow my older boy, his, the skill that we've identified he's greatest at is finding the poop emoji in any keyboard that he gets his hands on. So yeah, that was
it
all
headphones he was drawing on there that could be construed to something else?
No, he was just doing that, and then eventually, he found YouTube, and it was dude perfect. To the chagrin of the very patient appliance people at the big box stores.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
fuck them.
it was a conscious decision. Like there were a lot of fridges that we looked at that had Wi-Fi built in, and they do maintenance emails and that kind of thing. And like, sure, that stuff's cool, but like after the experience that we had with, with our shit breaking down 3 times in 5 years, like we just went basic and steered away from all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little regret today, but like I got nice cold ice and I got water coming out of the door, and both of those things work, and I don't have to live out of a cooler anymore. So for now, I don't need a hub.
You're shitting in high cotton.
Right? I really am.
I don't know what that expression means. I kind of grimace at some of the thoughts of that, but that's fine. It's a fun Southern witticism.
The higher thread count is really
that's really what it's all about, right? That's
but
really
it is this stuff. You hit the nail on the head. Like this stuff is ubiquitous, right? Like now every TV is a hub, every refrigerator is a hub, every dishwasher. We wandered over to the. We're in the market for a new dishwasher at some point because ours is literally rusting out of our cabinet.
Wow.
Because of, I'm not going to name any brands, but it's the same brand as the fridge. So
I get it. Yeah.
But yeah, again, every dishwasher has, some kind of connectivity to it, and that's awesome. But like for CI, like that stuff is kind of in its own ecosystem, right? Like
Right.
there's very much a smart things ecosystem or whatever. And that stuff doesn't necessarily talk to Crestron, Control 4, or Savant, like our home automation
Where's the
system.
benefit to the client that it does?
Exactly, right?
Illustrate the benefit where a touchpad interface with my dishwasher from my Crestron system makes any sense.
Right. So that's a problem for us. Like, that's a pretty massive problem for us, for control system companies, right? Like, so, your clients are going to know about these features, and they're going to know, and, a lot of them are going to want to access it, right? Like, it would be cool to pick up my phone and see what my freezer temperature is, when I'm away or whatever, just to make sure.
Do I have enough clear whiskey balls in my fridge when I get home?
Just make sure everything
really
is
important
okay,
to me.
or the dishwasher's done, or the oven is set, or whatever it is. And like, so now I'm in this other automation ecosystem, right? That's separate from my home automation system, and that's a problem. Right?
That's a no-no. Can't have that.
That's a big divergence. And I feel like what's going to drive this is, it's going to be customers, right? Like you don't necessarily have customers that are asking for, at least implicitly asking for a Savant system or a Crestron system or a Control 4 system. They want this stuff to work. They want their light, it's a great feature to be able to control their lights and whatever from wherever. But it's a big mistake not having these things work together, right? Like, your brand new Crestron home with Sub-Zero appliances and all this other stuff, the fact that you can't check your fridge temperature on your touchscreen, that's going to be a question you're getting asked more and more, right? Like,
Sure. Yeah, no,
you
that
know,
I think, yeah, certainly in a higher end residential setting where clients maybe a cooking channel person or just
sure.
loves to cook, or maybe they're a chef. I don't know if chefs bring their work home. I think that kind of lives more
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
at the restaurant or at the kitchen kind of thing. But um, yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking back to the the levels of innovation, kind of where we see the shift and all of this stuff. And you've mentioned it kind of briefly with the amps, with an app and that kind of stuff. The shift in all these acquisitions and mergers and intents and all of the things that are going on in the world. Like maybe $350 million isn't such a bad deal. Maybe it's like a fantastic, maybe it's a fantastic sale price for Massimo because they look at this and go, dude, nobody's buying AV receivers anymore. They're buying little amps with apps.
Right.
Like
Sure.
what does that look like? So yeah, it's interesting to get your perspective on kind of what you saw out there, and I hope we continue to innovate hardware and merge more of software. And I think, frankly, AI is going to be the thing that changes everything what we're all doing in the next 5 years. And not to put a window of time on it, but the mass adoption that we're seeing and the changes that we're seeing in the space outside of custom install
Yeah.
all looks like that.
Well,
So
there's and we're seeing little bits and pieces of this, but nothing really super coherent, right? So there is definitely, there are pieces of software right now that use AI. I mean, if you're in Microsoft, right, like Copilot is a thing. Like you could have it write an email, you can give it very little information to have it do it. Why couldn't you do that with a proposal? You feed this, and we talked about this when we had an AI show. Why couldn't you feed this thing bits and pieces of information and, how many square feet there is and how many rooms and everything else, and have something that
those
spits
models.
out. Yeah, have something that spits out how many wireless access points you need, how many distribution zones you need, how many, audio, speakers, whatever it is. Like, yeah, we're coming to that point for sure.
This is where we give away all of the sauce for free, and then we throw our hands up in the air later when somebody else has monopolized that or created an AI to do all this stuff, Chris. So another zillion
Hey,
dollar idea for free. Way to go.
well, so the dangerous part of this is that once that is available, it's not just going to be available to integrators.
You
So
shush. No,
the
nobody, no civilian will ever
the
get their
day is
hands on this.
coming when you have a client that approaches you and says, "Here's my bill of materials. I need you to install this stuff and, maybe program it. I don't know, but I mean, why
Right.
why couldn't you have an
AI
AI
program it
program
as
the
well.
system, right? The day is coming. Better plan for it. It's coming.
We need
That's
plumbers.
that's your dystopian future." Okay.
We need plumbers, apparently. That's what I keep hearing anyway.
Yeah,
But
well, I mean, yeah, like why don't you ask AI what it thinks of my shit clogged toilet? Well, that's not
right.
going to be a thing.
Well, you need to call a turd wrangler, buddy. I can't
Sure.
help you from
I
here.
mean,
Ones and zeros aren't going to fix
your
this.
your high tech toilet can absolutely tell your doctor that you have diabetes based on a lump of shit that you just left in the toilet, but it's not going to be able to unclog those pipes, and that's that's where I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, right. We need plumbers. I get it. Well, that and there's another nod to what keeps our industry vibrant is being able to adapt to whatever's coming down the pipe. So, man, I'm a popular guy today.
There you go. But
I'm not
yeah,
gonna
I don't
take that
know.
phone call though.
To get all the way back to the beginning, I mean, I didn't see a ton of like cool earth shaking stuff at the Tech Summit. I would imagine, the class I sat through a great late line class that was like basics of lighting in 45 minutes, and it
Yeah,
was
that's a
awesome.
fantastic class with Fuse. Yeah,
It was really
we
good.
know we work
And
with him, but if you ever wanted to just even get a basic concept of what lighting is, that's a great class.
are you done?
Sorry, I
No,
was
no. Hey,
trying to dovetail into what you were saying.
yeah, I got that. No, it was it was very good. Other than that, it was like let's take a look at this year's TV. Let's take a look at these. Let's take a look at these fixtures. Again, it's got value. It was less attended than it was in previous years, and maybe that changes. Maybe now everybody goes every other year. That could be the case. Who knows? But I think it's an interesting point about I'm curious to see how Cedia is this year because again, like the overarching industry vibe is like dealing with tariffs. There's not a whole lot of innovation. There's not a whole lot of, you absolutely need to see this thing. This kind of feels like an off year.
Yeah. Well, the Samsung booth is going to look like the Harman booth, which is going to look like the Marantz booth, which is going to look like the Denon booth, which is going to look like the Revel booth.
Think of all that real estate that just opened up. Now it's going to be the entire center of the show floor is just going to be the two S brands just backed up to each other.
And they've got a full entree of everything. Yeah. Sorry, just looking at the pieces on the chessboard is crazy.
What I'd like to see more of is more like if you've seen the movie Moana, when the little coconut guys roll up in their ship and there's just all you see is just coconut guys and they're just doing blow darts at each other. I'd like to see the 2S brands with adjacent booths just having that. Like that's what CEDIA is like now. It's just a full blown, like they're just shooting arrows at each other. Like I want to see this get a little more nasty. Maybe we're a little bit too, professional acrimony was the title of the last episode. Let's see some hostility, boys.
Let's take it down a notch. Let's not look for the high road. Let's look for the frontage road. You know what I mean? Like in Texas, you've got the FM roads. You got the little frontage road next to the highway where all the shit goes down. Let's see what's going on down there.
Why don't these manufacturers compete for my love? Right? Like this is I want to see some jousting. Right?
Yeah, I want to see you guys pull into the parking lot of a Stop and Rob or whatever those places are called, and let's hash this out in the parking lot like gentlemen.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just bring back duels. Let's just have a dueling area on the CEDIA floor, and everybody can work out their differences that way.
You'll know who the real warriors are because they got scars on their faces. Like walking through CEDIA, they're like, oh man, watch out for Savage. He's got a fucking scar under his eye.
What happened to you? Oh, my JL rep caught me in a demo for.
Oh man, I was stepping all over Barlow on a podcast, and he cut me like a fucking pig.
No. I'll just cut you out in editing.
It's fine.
That's the best part.
You have the power.
But
you have the touch.
No, it's it's uncertain times, man. We're coming up on. I think it's great. I think there's a lot coming down the pipe, but I think it's more we're kind of in this iterative cycle where maybe you're right. Maybe AI is going to be the next big leap or whatever, but we're the model number goes up by one every year.
It's a letter.
Yeah, it's
lose
the next
a number,
letter,
add a letter.
Yep.
Whatever.
It goes up. There's not a ton. Some invisible speakers are a thing now, right? Like one brand really did a great job, and now we're seeing a resurgence in this from all around.
Design. Yeah, the ASP. I had that conversation earlier today. Ham and eggs looks like $60,000 now. And when you think about it from what dollar qualifier that means in terms of what you can get for that money. They're big projects, right? They're large and design focused and profitable. So let's all get in the water together, ladies and gentlemen, and let's put our oars in there. It's all cash. The water is cash. You've just got to figure out how to scoop it into the boat.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. So
that's all I got.
We didn't talk about anything.
Nothing.
We talked about a lot. Did another cast. We got another one. We're keeping the streak alive. How many is it now? 72, 73?
I think this one is 73. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Man, what are we going to do for episode 100? I think that's the biggest question.
Fucking quit. That's what I'm
going to like you said, when we hit the century mark, that's it. We're done here?
Yeah, this is 72. So, yeah, we got 28 more to go.
Okay.
Yeah,
28 more weeks. So that gets us through the middle of next year sometime.
No, we are. I mean, behind the scenes, we are working on. I think there's going to be. I think a few of these need to be like a Hill You Die On versus.
For sure. We need to get some more guests on too, right?
Yep. Again,
we have some newly retired friends. We could talk to Jeff Goldstein now that he's not beholding to anybody.
You think he'd spill the tea? I don't think he'd.
He can spill all the tea. Well, I just want to hear the stories about calling on, electronic stores in New York City in the 70s and 80s. Those are the stories that I want to hear. You know what I mean? Like, you had to go to town with a bag of cash, or whatever. You had to talk to Nicky the Nose or somebody. Like, I don't know all the stories, but I know he's got a couple of them, so we'd love to get some of those out.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thank you, as always, for joining us today for this weekly therapy session, and
Absolutely.
we will talk to you soon.
Take care, everybody. Bye bye.